That's true. What does that mean? I think. I think I was unable to publish one of my videos because of a copyright claim. Don't let them bother me, please, God. Please. You're a thief. Please don't let them torture me, God. Please don't let them torture me.
Professor Miller, welcome. It's great to have you with us. So, what is the strategy behind having these particular police officers testify?
Well, first I want to say thank you, Tanya, for inviting me on the show. I think the strategy for having these particular police officers testify is to create a number of witnesses who can testify about the reasonableness of the force that was used in this situation from multiple different perspectives, because that is ultimately the question in this case. My guess would be that they're having as many officers testify as possible so that the evidence is potentially overwhelming on the question of reasonableness. If only one officer testified, that wouldn't provide quite the same weight. I also think that having, the police chief testify is certainly an important.
I got my wild orchid
But
lipstick.
having officers who are a little closer to having on-the-ground experience and being in these kinds of situations that police officers find them in is also another important piece of the strategy.
And earlier this morning, the judge delayed a ruling about allowing Floyd's friend, who was in the car with him before his fatal arrest, to testify. What impact could this have on the trial if his friend is indeed allowed to take the stand?
Well, I think that's a complicated question. I would think that his friend would be, helpful to the prosecution. One would guess. I saw at least a clip of his prior interview on media, closer to the time of the killing, and he would seem to be a helpful prosecution witness. I know there's a question of whether he would assert his Fifth Amendment rights and not testify for concern that he, I suppose, could be prosecuted for something, perhaps drug possession or something like that. So I think it's a bit of an open question, but it would be another person who was close up to the event. On the other hand, he's a friend. It seems that he was quite a close friend, and so his I guess his bias or his objectivity could be more easily questioned than that of the bystanders who have already testified.
It's video
It's
1950.
this question of objectivity.
It has a
because
copyright
what we were
claim,
talking about right before, because yesterday
so
we
it
saw
may
the
not
Capitol's
be
police chief testify that
visible.
Chauvin violated police standards and training. Is this unusual to see a police chief testify in these sorts of cases? Is it unusual to see, members of...
I sent you a text from there, but I don't know if it got sent or not. I can play it. They called us into the community room. So you can play it.
Lieutenant Mercil was clear enough, but when pressed, was careful not to draw too many firm conclusions about what might have been appropriate under the circumstances. I can't remember the term defense counsel used. It might have been you're backpedaling a little bit, or a term like that, and I think in fact that is what he did.
Right. Although when pressed, he did say, if I'm not incorrect, that it was inappropriate when pressed.
Yes, he did. He did. But it was that back and forth, and it which I think that's the best that I think the defense can hope for, then that type of hesitancy from an officer who is in fact testifying for the state can be an important factor in the minds of the jurors.
And Professor Miller, what will you be watching for? What else will you be watching for as this trial continues?
Several things, I think, and I have to say I wish I had been able to watch all of it. I haven't. I've been able to watch bits of it, and I really enjoyed watching it this morning. I would be looking for a couple of things. I've been surprised that there's been not much mention of the trivialness of the misdemeanor of the crime for which Mr. Floyd was being arrested, and sort of weighing that against the appropriateness of the use of force. It may be that other witnesses will be testifying about that, but that would typically be part of a continuum. If you're trying to arrest somebody who's behaving dangerously towards others, that's a different issue than arresting somebody for, even though it was a counterfeit bill allegedly. That's really similar to a shoplifting type incident with $20 at stake. So I've been a bit surprised that has not been emphasized, although I'm not an expert on the Minnesota or the Minneapolis use of force guidelines, which of course integrate the state law, to know how much of a factor that would be. I've been a little bit surprised by that. It's also interesting, I grew up in Minnesota, so this feels like a very Minnesota trial to me, with a sort of a cultural feel of being in Minnesota, and I've been a little surprised that the officers who've been testifying have been as measured as they've been. I think that may be a strategy choice, not to seem to be going over the top, to appear to be fair, to be professional, but you might expect to hear a little bit emotion behind their words, not to the degree that we heard from Mr. Floyd's girlfriend or the bystanders, but I'm expecting to see a little bit more oomph or perhaps emotion in this. But again, you have to look at the fact of who's on the jury and tailoring the trial to what the prosecution thinks will be most influential.
Okay, all right. Very interesting points, Professor Binnie Miller, law professor and co-director of the Criminal Justice Clinic at American University's Washington College of Law. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight.
Thank you. Have a good day.
President Biden is pushing forward on his promise to vaccinate 200 million Americans during his first 100 days in office. CBS News has learned the president is expected to announce vaccine eligibility for all adults beginning on April 19th. The announcement ramps up the administration's vaccine schedule by 2 weeks. The president had originally called on all states to follow a May 1st deadline. While the vaccine efforts continue to expand, the number of new cases being reported nationwide is also growing. On Monday, fans packed Globe Life Stadium in Arlington, Texas for opening day. The Texas Rangers welcomed nearly 40,000 fans to the ballpark to witness the first pitch of the season. The Rangers are the only major league team not limiting attendance to games because of COVID-19. CBS News' Natalie Brand has more.
President Biden is expected to call on states to make all adults eligible for COVID-19 vaccines by April 19th, if they haven't already done so.
We're now averaging 3.1 million shots per day over the most recent 7-day period. Over the weekend, there were more than 4 million recorded vaccinations in a single day for the first time.
The Biden administration says it has delivered 150 million vaccine doses in the president's first 75 days in office. His team sees a race to get more Americans vaccinated, with the number of new cases rising for 4 straight weeks.
Whether it explodes into a real surge or not remains to be seen. I think that the vaccine is going to prevent that from happening.
CDC data shows more than 75% of senior citizens have received at least one dose of the vaccine. Health officials say the rise in new cases is coming predominantly from younger adults. There's also increasing concern about outbreaks from school-aged children, but not necessarily from kids in the classroom.
We are learning that many outbreaks in young people are related to youth sports and extracurricular activities. According to CDC guidance, these activities should be limited.
But it's not just youth sports that are a concern, with officials specifically mentioning the nearly full ballpark at Monday's Texas Rangers baseball game with no social distancing limits. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
Dr. Jerry Abraham is the vaccine director of Kendron Community Health Center in South Los Angeles, and he joins me now. Dr. Abraham, welcome. Great to see you. So President Biden will be announcing all adults in the U.S. will be eligible for the vaccine on April 19th. But as you know, the number of new cases continues to tick up, and some experts believe a fourth wave of coronavirus cases is imminent. How does this new April 19th deadline impact a potential fourth wave?
Sure, thank you for having us. First, I'll just say I'm super excited that we're making this vaccine eligible now to all adults in America, and that is critical. Here in California, April 1st, we increased eligibility to everyone over 50 years old. And in California, we applaud our governor for making eligibility on April 15th for all adults. So we really look forward to this move by the Biden administration and making vaccines as accessible and as equitably distributed across this country.